And then for Cassidy, I would love to hear about how you figure out the pacing for your characters, like when they're falling in love.
I don't know. So I think it depends on what kind of ship it is, because I think with the different couples, like if you're doing friends to lovers, the pacing's different. If you're doing enemies to lovers, the pacing's very different. I think a lot of times I try to let the characters lead because I'm very much a pantser when I get to be. Like I like to write with the flow of things and not like worry about planning it too much. But usually that ends up with them doing like jumping ahead of me and being like, well, I want to kiss them. We haven't even had more than 2 conversations. Hold on. But I also think it's interesting because I found that I think the friends to lovers tend to take actually longer than my enemies to lovers couples do. Just because I think there's a little more at stake there in some ways. So I actually try to, I try to pace it out and like let them lead a little bit, but also pay attention and make sure that like, because I'm a slow burn girl, I'm like, I don't let them get ahead too far, but once we hit a certain point, I definitely let them have the reins a little bit. So.
And this one is for Carrie. Your debut novel, The Royal They, which is on the table, is about self-discovery. What lessons do you hope people take from your main character's journey?
So when I wrote The Royal Day, the big thing for me specifically, and I actually put it in my dedication, is there is not, as a non-binary AMAT person myself, I present as male to the public because, in general, just because it's easier and it's not a part of who I am. But the big thing with Intriguity and what they go through is, as non-binary people, we tend to have what I like to call main character syndrome. And it was important for Trudy to be able to shine while still kind of, falling in love with Flynn and dealing with being part of the wildest group of characters possible. So what I really wanted people to get out of this is to understand that your gender identity doesn't have to be understandable to other people. It doesn't have to present to other people. But if it's important to you, it's important to stand on those values and to stand on that belief and allow yourself to kind of put that energy into the world. So when I was writing Dreedy, that was the forefront of their character from the very beginning. And I was happy to be able to kind of keep it all the way through.
Okay. What's your favorite plot twist that you've written? And if you could explain it without giving them too much away. But I know you have some twisty turns in your books, so I'd love to hear about if you have a favorite.
I actually have 3 books that have, I don't need the microphone. I have 3 books that have some pretty significant plot twists. One is my newest one that I just wrote. It's actually technically paranormal. Came out last year, and there's a plot twist that happens like near the end. Apparently it's a pattern for me. Near the end, and I think for some people it kind of came out of nowhere. And I like to turn what people expect onto its ear, right? So I do have, like, probably my favorite plot twist was actually a sci-fi, which was this one. My very favorite plot twist. Nobody has guessed it. This came out my first year in 2018. Nobody has guessed the plot twist ever. And luckily nobody has spoiled it on mine either. And it's one of those dichotomous things that people say, this book was a 4, but I got to the plot twist and it became a 5. And then, like, literally a day later, I had a review said this was a 5, but I didn't like the plot twist, it became a 4. So it's kind of funny. But I don't want to spoil any of the plot twists. So I have another one, also a sci-fi. And the plot twist is a woman who is a great niece of Alan Turing, who's sci-fi, right? And she actually, at the beginning of the book, she wakes, she had been in an accident, hit struck by a car, was put in a medically induced coma. And when she wakes, she'd suffered some brain injury, and she's sensory amnesia, and she's kind of like different personality. So she's relearning life. She's rediscovering the things that she likes. She falls in love, she adopts a kitten. And then there's a huge plot twist that some people got right away. I threw some red herrings in there. Like, oh, there's a serum that your company is developing, and there's some shady stuff going on. Threw some red herrings in. The serum had nothing to do with anything. But some people guess it right away. They're like, oh, I know what's going on. I know who she is. Other people get to the plot twist and they're like, whoa, what? Right? And I think that's my favorite thing, is that as much as I'm like, you really should have got that already, but I love it when people are surprised, especially when they're kind of pleasantly surprised, right? Because I don't like people to assume. I like to make it realistic. I like to make it believable, but I also like to say, I got you, you know? So. Paradise Lost and Found is the most recent one, the paranormal, that has like a double plot twist in the last like so many chapters. Like last third of the book.
And then for Jamie, what's your trick for writing a successful relationship?
I'm wondering why I picked that question now. I'm like, oh, you picked one. So I guess I think about some of the relationships I've written. Arcanum has Elvan, who is the homebody, extremely shy. He meets Drace, who Elvan's like, I'm probably like a 4, and this guy's like a 10, and I put in a lot of the tropes of, you know, the one falling into the other. They have forced proximity, all the things that would get the characters close together. But there's constantly, Elvan is in his head trying to say, this relationship can't happen. I'm totally out of this league. And then it just sort of progresses, and he realizes, no, this guy doesn't. Maybe it's not just his looks. Maybe he actually is a good person inside. And then skip ahead to Lelouch's Legacy, the newest one. Same kind of thing where we have the guy from Minnesota meeting this super hot Italian guy, and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm probably like a 10 in Minnesota, but I don't know what I have against Minnesota, but I'm probably like, you know, whatever. But in Minnesota, it's all dim, like Jims and Dougs, and I get over to here, and you know, just a bunch of hot guys all over the place. But then he starts to analyze what Leo might have versus his previous relationships, and he says, well, he's good in all of these ways, and so he's trying to compare it against previous relationships. What didn't work for the character in the past? How was this one different? And then try not to just smash them together right away. Kind of has to draw out, have a couple false starts. There's always the third act breakup in every book too, some reason why they can't end up together, but then they get past that. I know it's such a trope, a lot of people hate the third act breakup, but it shows that the characters are able to get past some major problem they have together. So writing the relationship, there is a formula in books for it, and as difficult as it is to deviate from the formula is tried and true, as long as you can mask it enough in the book and make it not like, I know that this is going to happen next because it's next on the checklist. So, long story short, masking the formula, I guess.
Make it believable.
Yeah, make it believable, exactly.
That's a great answer. Why you were nervous about
I
that.
stayed on.
All right, and then for BK, your books touch on trauma and mental health. How do you think writing and reading can help people with their own mental health?
Okay, so this one actually comes from my own personal experience. My first book that I started writing was actually a grief writing hobby that I was doing. I suffered from secondary infertility and had multiple pregnancy losses, and the third one hit me so hard that I just couldn't function. So I started writing. I didn't know that I was writing out my grief when I was writing. It was just an escape for me. It was a way to like stop the perseverating thoughts, stop the guilt, stop the shame that I was feeling, and be able to just go into a different world and not be who I was in reality. And so that's how Shadows Lost ultimately got developed. And when my editor went through it, she was like, this sounds a lot like what you went through. And I didn't realize that when I started writing it. So the mental health journey, touching upon trauma and how we deal with that becomes very important in my books. And for a reader or a writer, like I said, I think it is a just wonderful way to escape, to collect your thoughts, to kind of regroup a little bit. In some ways, you can connect to characters that maybe have overcome those emotions as well, and give you the strength to go back out into the real world and carry on yourself. So that is pretty much in a nutshell how I address the mental health.
Friend is very therapeutic. Yes. All right, for Cassidy, how do you decide the names for your characters? What is that process? And have you ever created a name that you later hated?
Well, first of all, the main character's name is Soren. She was not supposed to stay Soren. That was a placeholder name that I just had in my head at the time. I don't even remember why, but it was just like, she just needs a name, I'll figure it out later. And then she would not give it up. That was her name. I couldn't rename her anything else, that was it. Elias came with his name, he walked right on and that was who he was. Finn's name, his full name is Finnick, and it's because I'm still very salty about the Hunger Games Finnick. And I was like, I'm gonna fix it. So that's why he has his name. But yeah, and then, so some of them are just like that, or they either come with it, or it's kind of an inside joke with myself. I think there's a mountain kingdom in the book, and the prince and princess are Everin and Rainy, so it's Everest and Rainier are mountains in the real world. So I was like, this is kind of fun. But with the gods' names, I wanted to be a little bit more. I want to be a little more intentional. I wanted to try and follow it. So any good, very original fantasy author, I went to Google Translate and looked up different Latin words and different things like that. So obviously Tempest is storms in nature. Mortem, you could it's death and everything. But I had some fun with Acasio. Is actually it's not quite time, it's an opportunity or an opportune moment, and it just kind of got in there, and I was that's kind of fun because it fits with the goddess's personality and also her realm a little bit. So yeah, some of them are more intentional than others, some of them are just fun for me, and sometimes they just come with them, so that's how I do it.